Imagine a paradise where angels walk like us without wings, and God is not perched upon a majestic throne. No golden streets, no massive pearly gates gleaming under heavenly light. Instead, it's a wide-open realm of endless gardens, where souls roam freely, breathing in the purest essence of life itself. A heaven that feels more like an eternal homeland than the celestial kingdom we're used to picturing. It sounds almost unbelievable, right? A heaven so different from the one Western traditions have painted for centuries. But this isn't just fantasy. It's the vision found in the ancient Ethiopian Bible. This sacred text offers a glimpse into a world shaped by centuries of independent spiritual growth, untouched by the tides of European theology. It's not a mistranslation or a myth. It's a testament to a rich, ancient faith that evolved on its own path. You see, Ethiopia holds a rare and powerful history. It stands as the only African country that resisted full colonization, preserving not just its political independence, but its spiritual identity as well. This freedom allowed Ethiopian Christianity to flourish into something deeply unique, blending scriptural tradition with the vivid colors of its own remarkable culture. While Western traditions often portray heaven as a realm of floating clouds, winged cherubs, and towering gates of pearl, the Ethiopian vision stands apart, offering a fresh and transformative perspective on what paradise can truly be. It makes you wonder, why does such a striking difference exist? And beyond that, what does it reveal about the vast and colorful landscape of human spirituality? Today, we embark on an extraordinary exploration. We'll dive deep into these contrasting images, peeling back layers of history and culture to uncover how different spiritual experiences have molded unique expressions of the same core faith. And along the way, we might discover something even greater, a powerful reminder that belief, though rooted in the same truths, can blossom into countless beautiful forms. To truly grasp how Ethiopia's vision of heaven came to be, we must travel back to the 4th century AD. It was then that Christianity officially became the state religion of the Kingdom of Axum, one of the world's greatest ancient civilizations. But if we want to understand the full picture, we have to go even further back in time, to the very first seeds of faith planted deep within Ethiopian soil. According to the sacred traditions of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, their deep roots in both Judaism and Christianity can be traced back to the legendary encounter between King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. As told in the Kebra Nagast, the national epic of Ethiopia, this meeting gave rise to a royal bloodline that linked Ethiopia directly to ancient Israel. This ancient connection explains why Ethiopian Christianity still carries so many elements of Jewish tradition, uniquely woven into its faith. The Ethiopian Bible, preserved in the ancient Ge'ez language, stands as one of the most fascinating and distinct versions of the Bible anywhere in the world. It features 81 books, far more than the 66 found in the Protestant canon, or the 73 in the Catholic one, and includes sacred texts like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, writings that disappeared from most Western traditions long ago. Yet it's not just the expanded collection of scriptures that sets the Ethiopian Bible apart. The way spiritual concepts are interpreted within it opens an entirely different window into the divine. Take angels, for example. While Western Christianity often imagines them as radiant beings with flowing white wings and gleaming halos, the Ethiopian tradition describes them in ways that focus purely on their spiritual essence, free from any fixed physical form. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, one of the oldest Christian communities on earth, grew along its own path, separate from both Rome and Constantinople for much of its existence. This independence allowed Ethiopia to preserve ancient traditions and build a theological system unlike any other. Even today, they maintain practices that reflect deep historical roots, such as following Jewish dietary laws and the ritual of circumcision, customs that most Christian groups left behind centuries ago. One of the most striking aspects of Ethiopian Christianity is how seamlessly it blends indigenous culture with the Christian faith. Rather than adopting a Western framework, Ethiopia wove Christianity into the very fabric of its own traditions, creating a faith that feels organic and deeply Ethiopian. You can see this fusion everywhere, in their vibrant religious paintings, in the breathtaking rock-hewn churches, and especially in their profound, earthy vision of paradise. You might be asking yourself, how did such a rare and distinctive form of Christianity managed to survive untouched. The secret lies in Ethiopia's geography. Shielded by rugged mountains and vast deserts, Ethiopia stood as a fortress of cultural and religious autonomy for centuries, even as waves of colonization swept across the rest of Africa. This independence, combined with the careful preservation of ancient scriptures and oral traditions, has enabled Ethiopia to cultivate a distinct and profound understanding of heaven, one that is deeply intertwined with both its cultural heritage and its spiritual identity. When we place the Ethiopian Bible alongside Western versions, the contrasts in how heaven is understood become striking and thought-provoking. Let's take a closer look at three key differences, each of which may challenge our assumptions and encourage deep reflection. First, while Western depictions of heaven often center around an ethereal kingdom in the clouds, complete with pearly gates and streets of gold, the Ethiopian Bible presents a different vision. In the ancient Ge'ez texts, heaven is depicted not as a distant, otherworldly realm, but as a vast, expansive land that feels more attuned to the rhythms of nature. In this vision, the lines between the spiritual and the natural blur, creating a paradise that is alive, vibrant, and deeply connected to the earth. The question is, why this divergence? What does this tell us about how cultures perceive the divine and the sacred? Second, the role of angels in Ethiopian heaven contrasts sharply with Western representations. Rather than the winged beings clad in white robes, often depicted in European art, Ethiopian tradition portrays angels as pure spiritual presences, dynamic energies that transcend any physical form. They are understood not as beings bound by shape or appearance, but as abstract, powerful forces. This challenges us to rethink how we perceive spiritual entities and the way they interact with the world around us. Third, and perhaps most unexpectedly, is the way the Ethiopian Bible portrays the relationship between humans and the divine in heaven. While Western traditions often emphasize the image of God seated on a distant throne, with a clear and pronounced divide between creator and creation, the Ethiopian vision offers a much more intimate and direct connection. In this view, the divine is not distant or unreachable, but present and accessible, fostering a closer bond between humanity and the sacred. These differences raise a profound question. Are these two visions simply different versions of the same heavenly realm, or do they reflect two distinct understandings of the same spiritual truth? The answer, as it often is with matters of faith, is likely far more nuanced than we can immediately grasp. Scholars have put forward several theories to explain these striking differences. Some believe it stems from a fusion between Christianity and Ethiopia's ancient indigenous beliefs, creating a unique spiritual synthesis. Others argue that Ethiopia has preserved an early, more original form of Christianity, one that remained untouched by the Latinization and doctrinal shifts that reshaped Western faith traditions. Yet perhaps the most crucial insight lies in recognizing the profound role culture plays in shaping spiritual understanding. How is it that the same core faith can lead to such dramatically different interpretations across cultures? And what does this reveal about the true nature of heaven itself? As we continue this journey into the Ethiopian vision of paradise, these questions will serve as our compass, guiding us deeper into not only the Ethiopian Bible, but also into a broader, richer understanding of faith itself and the beautiful ways humans seek to grasp the mysteries of the divine. The first striking concept we encounter is the idea of the seven heavens, a rich and layered cosmic vision that offers far more complexity than the common notion of a single unified heaven. In ancient Ethiopian belief, the heavens are divided into 7 distinct realms, each carrying its own deep significance and spiritual function. The first, heaven, known as Sakai, acts as a gateway between the physical world and the spiritual journey beyond. Here, newly departed souls find themselves in a realm filled with vibrant gardens and crystal-clear rivers, images that strikingly mirror the lush landscapes of Ethiopia itself. Scholars suggest that this connection between geography and spirituality reflects how the Ethiopian people wove their natural surroundings into their vision of the divine. The second heaven, Kayama, is the realm of purification. But unlike the Western concept of purgatory, which often conjures images of suffering and punishment, Kayama is portrayed as a serene space of renewal and growth. Bathed in gentle light and fresh, life-giving air, souls are lovingly guided by spiritual presences, more like formless mentors than the winged angels familiar to Western imaginations. Here, the soul doesn't suffer, it awakens. The third heaven, called Ma'alt, is revered as the dwelling place of cosmic wisdom. According to the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, a sacred text preserved only within the Ethiopian Bible, this is the realm where the mysteries of creation are stored. Souls that reach Ma'alt are granted profound insights into the nature of the universe, gaining knowledge of the past, present, and future in a way that transcends human limitations. It's fascinating when we place this side by side with the Western idea of the Book of Life. In Western Christianity, the Book of Life is largely about recording human deeds for judgment. In contrast, the Ethiopian vision shifts the focus toward unveiling universal truths, suggesting that the afterlife is less about judgment and more about awakening to deeper realities. The fourth heaven, Baran, is described as the realm of pure light, not light as we perceive it with our physical senses, but the radiant illumination of spiritual clarity. In the ancient Ge'ez texts, this place is depicted as utterly free from darkness, not darkness as mere absence of light, but as the absence of confusion, doubt, or ignorance. This vision reveals Ethiopia's profound understanding of light, not just as a physical phenomenon, but as a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment and true perception. The fifth heaven, known as Meon, is the sacred realm where souls fully align with the will of the Creator. What stands out here is the absence of separation between the worshipper and the worshipped, unlike the Western view, which often emphasizes the distinction between humanity and God. Meon is portrayed as a state of perfect spiritual unity, a complete merging of the soul with divine intention, where individuality dissolves into pure harmony. The sixth heaven, called Zebul, is the realm of cosmic music, but not the familiar choirs or hymns often imagined in Western traditions. Instead, Ethiopian texts describe Zebul as the place where the very sound of creation resonates, the primordial vibration that underpins all existence. In a fascinating way, this ancient idea echoes modern scientific theories like string theory and quantum physics, where the universe is seen as being formed by fundamental vibrations at the smallest scales. Finally, the seventh heaven, Erebath, is the highest and most sacred of all realms. But instead of grand thrones or majestic palaces, as often pictured in Western visions, Erebath is described as a state of pure being, a realm beyond form or separation, where the lines between creator and creation, between the divine and the human, completely vanish into a single, boundless existence. This vision of the seventh heaven bears a striking resemblance to the Buddhist concept of nirvana, a state of liberation and union beyond individuality, which reveals intriguing parallels between seemingly distant spiritual traditions. Another fascinating aspect of the Ethiopian description of heaven is the complete absence of material imagery. Unlike Western depictions filled with gold, jewels, and grand architecture, the Ethiopian heavens focus entirely on spiritual states and the evolution of consciousness. This reveals a profound and perhaps more timeless view of true happiness and spiritual fulfillment, one that prioritizes inner transformation over external splendor. The ancient Ge'ez texts even detail how souls move between these heavenly realms. Interestingly, there's no mention of wings, flight, or any physical transportation as we often find in Western imagery. Instead, the journey is portrayed as a transition between different states of awareness, almost like shifting between dimensions of existence. This idea feels remarkably aligned with modern scientific notions of space-time and parallel realities, showing once again the deep sophistication of Ethiopia's spiritual vision. Another fascinating feature is the way time is perceived in the Ethiopian heavens. Rather than the Western idea of an eternal, unchanging heaven existing along a straight line of time, the Ethiopian Bible presents a more dynamic vision. Time flows in a circular or spiral pattern, where past, present, and future are interconnected. This cyclical view of time adds profound depth to their concept of eternity, suggesting a living, breathing existence rather than a static one. Equally striking is the Ethiopian vision of relationships among souls in heaven. In contrast to the rigid hierarchies often imagined in Western depictions, with saints, angels, and ordinary souls ranked in celestial order, the Ethiopian tradition describes souls as points of light woven into an intricate cosmic network. Each soul plays a unique part, contributing to the overall harmony without dominance or subordination, emphasizing unity over status. When it comes to language, the Ge'ez texts are rich with metaphors and imagery drawn directly from Ethiopian nature. Rather than speaking of streets of gold, they describe paths of light. Instead of thrones, there are centers of understanding. This naturalistic approach not only grounds their vision of heaven in the beauty of the real world, but also reflects a deeper intimacy with the environment and everyday life of the Ethiopian people. Another remarkable aspect is the Ethiopian concept of boundaries within heaven. Unlike the Western imagery of towering walls or pearly gates marking clear divisions, in Ethiopian tradition, boundaries are defined internally by the level of spiritual awareness and growth of each soul. Progression through the heavens is seen not as a sudden leap but as an ongoing, organic process of deepening consciousness and understanding. Ancient Ethiopian texts also speak of the sound of heaven, but it is not the choir of singing angels familiar to Western thought. Instead, it is described as a delicate vibration, the original resonance of creation itself. Interestingly, modern scholars have drawn parallels between this ancient idea and recent scientific discoveries about gravitational waves and the underlying vibrations of fundamental particles, highlighting once again the surprising sophistication of Ethiopian spiritual thought. Perhaps the most unique and profound idea in Ethiopian descriptions of heaven is the notion of returning. Heaven is not envisioned as a final, static resting place, but as a dynamic, cyclical journey of consciousness. Souls ascend, learn, and ultimately return to their divine source, but now transformed, carrying a deeper, more complete understanding. This beautifully reflects an evolving, ever-deepening purpose behind spiritual existence, emphasizing growth and reunion over mere arrival. To fully grasp the distinct vision Ethiopians have of heaven, we must immerse ourselves in the cultural and geographical backdrop that shaped it. Picture yourself standing atop the Ethiopian highlands, where the thin, crisp air carries a sense of otherworldliness, and the horizon blurs the line between earth and sky in the soft morning mist. This extraordinary landscape has profoundly influenced the Ethiopian spiritual imagination. Ethiopia is not merely a country, it is the cradle of an ancient civilization that stretches back millennia. Long before the arrival of Christianity, Ethiopians held intricate spiritual beliefs where the natural and supernatural realms were deeply intertwined, unlike the rigid separations found in much of Western tradition. This deep-rooted connection between nature and spirit explains why, in the Ethiopian vision of heaven, natural elements like rivers, mountains, and gardens seamlessly blend with the divine, creating a holistic spiritual reality rather than a distant, otherworldly realm. A major cultural force shaping Ethiopia's vision of heaven is its ancient connection to Israel. According to the powerful narrative preserved in the Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia's royal bloodline traces directly back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, establishing a profound link between Ethiopia and the traditions of ancient Israel. But this is far more than a story of ancestry. It forms the backbone of Ethiopia's distinct spiritual identity, influencing everything from religious practice to the very fabric of belief systems that persist to this day. An essential part of this cultural fabric is Ethiopia's unique perception of time. Unlike the West's predominantly linear understanding of time, Ethiopians traditionally embrace a cyclical view where past, present, and future are fluid and interconnected. This cyclical notion deeply shapes their concept of heaven, not as a final resting place, but as an ongoing journey of transformation, a living process of growth and return. Ancient Ethiopian art offers profound insights into their vision of heaven. The murals found in the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela are far more than artistic masterpieces. They are portals into a different understanding of existence. In these sacred images, space and time dissolve. Figures are portrayed outside the bounds of conventional perspective, reflecting a worldview where physical laws do not confine spiritual truth. Another vital cultural element is the central role of community in Ethiopian life. Unlike the strong individualistic focus typical in Western societies, Ethiopian culture places deep emphasis on collective identity and interdependence. This collective mindset naturally extends into their concept of heaven, envisioning it not as a realm of isolated bliss for the individual, but as a symphony of communal harmony. The Ge'ez language, Ethiopia's ancient and sacred tongue also profoundly shapes their spiritual imagination. Its linguistic structure and rich vocabulary offer tools to articulate subtle and abstract spiritual realities, allowing expressions of heaven and the divine that surpass the capabilities of many Western languages. For instance, in the Ge'ez language, there are distinct words to describe spiritual states that have no direct counterpart in English or other European languages. These words capture nuances of the soul's journey, transcending the limitations of everyday language and providing a deeper, more intricate understanding of spiritual experiences. The geographical and climatic features of Ethiopia also play a crucial role in shaping their vision of heaven. With its majestic highlands and deep valleys, the boundary between earth and sky is often blurred. This natural landscape mirrors their spiritual perspective. Heaven is not an unreachable realm high in the clouds, but a parallel reality that feels close, immediate, and deeply interconnected with the earthly realm. Ethiopia's rich oral history tradition also enriches its understanding of heaven. Passed down through generations, stories of the spiritual world are constantly evolving, adapting, and growing. This tradition allows for a more fluid, dynamic conception of heaven, one that is alive with the insights and experiences of each generation, rather than fixed in the rigid form of written texts. Another key cultural aspect influencing the Ethiopian view of heaven is their relationship with nature. In traditional Ethiopian culture, nature is not something to dominate or control, but rather an integral part of the spiritual fabric of reality. This reverence for nature explains why natural elements play a central role in their vision of heaven, rather than being secondary or detached from the divine. The traditional educational system of Ethiopian monasteries also contributes to a unique understanding of heaven. Within these sacred institutions, students not only study religious texts, but also delve into astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy. This combination of intellectual and spiritual training fosters a holistic approach to reality, blending both scientific knowledge and spiritual wisdom in their perception of heaven. Finally, Ethiopia's unparalleled political history plays a pivotal role in shaping their spiritual beliefs. As the only African nation never fully colonized, Ethiopia preserved its cultural and religious independence, allowing it to cultivate an understanding of heaven that is distinctly its own. Free from the heavy influence of Western thought and external pressures, all these cultural elements converge to form a rich, multi-layered understanding of heaven, a heaven that is deeply intertwined with the land and people of Ethiopia. This is not just another variation of the Western concept of heaven, but a completely distinct vision of spiritual reality, shaped by thousands of years of history, culture, and religious development. As we explore the theological implications of heaven in the Ethiopian Bible, we are confronted with a crucial question. Are these differences simply a product of cultural interpretation, or do they point to a deeper and unique theological understanding of the nature of spiritual reality? Modern theologians have highlighted that Ethiopia's view of heaven is non-dualistic, unlike Western theology, which often draws a sharp line between the material and spiritual realms. Ethiopian thought sees them as interconnected. This approach is not a deviation from Christian orthodoxy. In fact, it may more closely reflect the views of the early church, where the material and spiritual worlds were not viewed as entirely separate, but as part of a unified, holistic reality. One of the most profound theological implications in Ethiopian thought is how the Ethiopian Bible redefines the relationship between the Creator and creation. Unlike the rigid hierarchical model often seen in Western theology, Ethiopian theology proposes a model of co-presence, where divinity is interwoven with every aspect of creation, not confined solely to the heavenly realm. This reflects a view of the world where the divine is present in all things, and not just a distant, separate entity from the physical world. The Ethiopian Bible also offers a revolutionary concept of salvation. While Western Christianity tends to emphasize individual salvation, Ethiopian theology sees salvation as a collective journey, a process where all of creation moves towards perfection. This idea mirrors Origen's notion of apokatastasis, the belief that in the end, all creation will be reconciled with the Creator, suggesting a more inclusive and universal view of salvation. Another fascinating aspect of the Ethiopian Bible is its treatment of time in heaven. While Western theology often portrays heaven as a timeless, unchanging state, The Ethiopian perspective offers a radically different view of time, not as a void or absence, but as a transformed and dynamic form of time where growth, development, and transformation are ongoing. This view challenges the Western idea of eternal stasis, proposing instead a continuous progression towards deeper spiritual fulfillment. Modern theologians are particularly fascinated by the Ethiopian Bible's unique approach to the issue of the body in heaven. While Western thought often leans towards a dematerialized view of the afterlife, Ethiopian theology presents a more robust incarnational understanding. Here, the body is not discarded or left behind, but instead, it is transformed and elevated to a higher spiritual state. This offers a perspective in which the physical and spiritual are not in opposition, but are integrated into a unified, transcendent reality. This leads us to another significant theological concept, the nature of joy in heaven. In contrast to the Western focus on purely spiritual joy, the Ethiopian Bible suggests a more holistic experience of joy, one that encompasses both material and spiritual elements. This reflects a deeper and more comprehensive theology of joy, acknowledging the full human experience, where happiness is not simply about spiritual elevation, but about the integration of the physical and spiritual realms. The Ethiopian Bible's understanding of angels also presents profound theological insights. Instead of viewing angels as separate, distinct beings with a defined role, Ethiopian theology understands angels as modes of divine presence, manifestations through which divinity interacts with the universe. This idea echoes the Eastern theological concept of divine energies, where spiritual entities are seen not as separate beings, but as expressions of the divine, active in the world around us. One of the most significant contributions of Ethiopian theology is its approach to the relationship between justice and mercy in heaven. Unlike in Western theology, where these two principles are often seen as opposing forces, the Ethiopian Bible presents a unique synthesis. Here, justice and mercy are not in conflict, but are understood as complementary aspects of the same divine reality. This suggests a vision of heaven where divine justice does not exclude mercy, and mercy is not given at the expense of justice, but both work together in perfect harmony to guide creation toward redemption. Scholars have also noted that the concept of heaven in the Ethiopian Bible has important implications for ecological theology. By not creating a rigid separation between nature and grace, Ethiopian theology provides a foundation for a more integrated environmental theology. In this view, nature is not something separate from the divine, but an essential part of the divine creation, which invites humanity to care for and respect the environment as an act of spiritual reverence and responsibility. Finally, these theological implications are not just theoretical, they carry profound, practical significance for the life of faith. They point toward a more holistic approach to spirituality, one that sees heaven not as a distant, unreachable destination, but as a reality that can be experienced and lived out in the present. This perspective encourages believers to integrate spiritual principles into every aspect of life, fostering a deeper connection with both the divine and the world around them. These discoveries raise important questions for contemporary theology. Is it time to expand our understanding of heaven? And more importantly, how can these insights help us live a richer and more meaningful life of faith in the modern world? As we conclude this exploration, it is vital to synthesize and understand the profound significance of the differences in the concept of heaven between the Ethiopian Bible and Western traditions. These differences are not mere theological curiosities but offer valuable lessons on how we understand and experience faith in today's world. To begin, let's summarize the main reasons for these differences. We've seen that Ethiopia's geography, history, and culture have played a crucial role in shaping their unique view of heaven. From the highlands where the earth and sky seem to blur to the ancient connection to Israel's roots, Ethiopia's identity has deeply influenced its religious worldview. But more importantly, these differences demonstrate the incredible adaptability of the Christian faith, how it can evolve and be expressed in different cultural contexts while still preserving its core essence. This calls us to reflect on the diversity of faith expressions across the world and the universal truths that unite them. One of the most important insights we can draw is the value of having multiple understandings of heaven. In our increasingly diverse and connected world, recognizing and respecting different understandings of spiritual reality becomes more important than ever. Ethiopia's view of a heaven without rigid boundaries between the material and spiritual can help us overcome unnecessary divisions in the life of faith. It challenges the idea that the spiritual and material worlds are separate, offering a more integrated approach to life, where the sacred permeates every aspect of existence. For modern believers, these insights offer practical significance. First, they invite us to expand our vision of heaven, not just as a distant place we hope to reach after death, but as a reality that can be experienced and lived in the present. It calls us to live more intentionally, seeing the sacred in our everyday lives and in our relationships with the world around us. Ethiopia's concept of the interweaving of heaven and earth can help us live a richer and more meaningful spiritual life. By seeing the divine as present and active in both the material world and the spiritual realm, we can cultivate a deeper sense of connection, not only to the Creator, but to each other and the world we inhabit. This understanding encourages us to seek a harmony between faith, action, and the world we live in, making heaven not just a future hope, but a present reality to be lived out in every moment. Second, Ethiopia's holistic approach to body and spirit can help us overcome the tendency to separate spiritual life from daily life. Instead of viewing spirituality as a separate domain, we can learn to integrate it into every aspect of life. This approach teaches us that every action, every thought, and every relationship is an opportunity to express our spiritual values and grow closer to the divine. By embracing this view, we cultivate a more authentic and interconnected way of living. Another important lesson comes from how the Ethiopian Bible emphasizes community in heaven. In an age of extreme individualism, this reminds us that the spiritual journey is not a solitary one, but a shared experience with the community. It teaches us that our actions affect others, and true spiritual growth involves fostering connections and unity, rather than isolation or separation. It calls us to build stronger, more compassionate communities both within and outside of religious contexts. For those interested in interfaith dialogue, Ethiopia's perspective provides a useful model. Their integration of elements from Judaism and indigenous culture into Christian understanding shows the potential for meaningful cultural religious dialogue and synthesis. By embracing diverse traditions and beliefs, Ethiopia offers a framework for creating more inclusive and enriching exchanges between different faiths, helping to foster greater mutual understanding and respect in our globalized world. Looking to the future, these insights can contribute to developing a theology suitable for the 21st century. In the context of global challenges such as environmental crises and social fragmentation, Ethiopia's holistic approach to the relationship between nature, humanity, and divinity can provide valuable insights. Their view reminds us that the spiritual and material worlds are deeply interconnected, urging us to protect the earth and strengthen our collective responsibility. As we face unprecedented challenges, this understanding offers hope and guidance for creating a more harmonious and sustainable future. This brings us to the question of the relevance of these ancient perspectives in today's world. It may surprise many to discover that much of Ethiopia's conception of heaven resonates with contemporary thought, touching on areas like quantum physics and ecological theories. This indicates that sometimes, in order to move forward, we must revisit and embrace ancient wisdom that has been shaped by millennia of cultural and spiritual development. For those who are eager to explore this subject further, there is a wealth of accessible resources available. Ethiopian scholars and theologians are diligently working to bring these rich insights to the forefront of global academic discussions. Moreover, institutions and research centers dedicated to Ethiopian Christianity are growing, providing more opportunities for in-depth exploration and cross-cultural exchange. As we wrap up this exploration, it's important to remember that the aim is not to determine which version of heaven is right, but to appreciate that spiritual truth is often far more complex and varied than we typically imagine. These differing views on heaven invite us to broaden our understanding of the divine and to recognize the beauty of spiritual diversity. Ethiopia's unique perspective on heaven serves as a powerful reminder that some of the most profound revelations about spiritual reality may come from unexpected places, encouraging us to remain open-minded and receptive to the many ways humanity has sought to understand the divine. So, what does all this mean for us today? Perhaps it's an invitation to expand our vision of heaven and of faith itself. It's a reminder that the spiritual journey isn't always a straight path. Sometimes the roads less traveled lead to the most transformative discoveries. Returning to the question about a heaven without winged angels, perhaps we can now see that it's not about a completely different heaven, but rather a different perspective on the same profound spiritual reality. In this difference, we don't find contradiction, but a richness that deepens our understanding of human faith and the divine. Let these insights be more than just knowledge that resides in our minds. Let them serve as a wellspring of inspiration for how we live out our faith in the world. After all, the true value of understanding heaven lies not in how much we know about it, but in how those understandings shape the way we live today.